All right, guys, it's time to talk about Black Adam, a movie that has seriously been in development for 15 years when they announced Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson playing the part way back in the day, back in 2007. And yeah, it's finally here, and we're going to talk about it. So Black Adam is a movie directed by Jaume Collet-Serra. I hope I'm saying his name right. He directed that movie, The Jungle Cruise, for Disney last year or the year before. And I thought that one was okay. So when he got announced for this one, I was like, okay, so clearly him and The Rock got some chemistry, directing and acting. And, so they were on the same page jiving. And this was a guy that The Rock felt confident in to direct this movie. And, so with this movie, I was pretty excited. I like DC Comics, obviously. DC, the characters. I also dug the Shazam movie, and Black Adam is I won't say it was spun out of Shazam, the movie, because they are two different movies, but there are some stuff that connects those. And I was very curious going into this how related to the Shazam it would be, and they definitely surprised me in a good way with how that was connected. But there's no Shazam in this, so it's kind of its own standalone thing. What they do in this movie, though, is we get introduced to some more DC heroes, mainly the Justice Society of America, which I know a lot of people have never heard of, but they were kind of a precursor to the Justice League. So they're kind of more of an elder statesman type group that were around in the DC world before the Justice League. And we've never really seen them in movies before, so it was kind of cool seeing them brought in. And But let's just kind of roll through the cast. Like, obviously, you got Dwayne Johnson, a.k.a. The Rock, as Black Adam. I think he carries this movie. He does a lot of cool stuff in this. And I think this was one of the more interesting roles he's done, because it's not him being The Rock. It was him actually being this anti-hero, this, this champion of this nation. And so he wasn't, like, snarky, and he wasn't, like, super The Rock, like how The Rock's got those rockisms. Definitely none of that. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, he gets some jokes, which is cool and fine by me. But I think he actually did a decent job playing a different type of character. And it was cool seeing him kind of be menacing, kind of being, he's usually a badass in this movie, but being more of a kind of a badass. You're like, I don't know if what you're doing should be done. And it was really cool seeing that. But then you also got members of the JSA. So you got Pierce Brosnan coming in as Dr. Fate, which is really cool seeing him. I think he probably gives the best performance out of everybody in the movie. Then you got Aldis Hodge as Hawkman, which is a cool character. I've always liked Hawkman in the comics, and I kind of like this iteration of him, a little more brash, a little more kind of he's like the leader, and he's got all the bells and whistles, the toys that the team uses. Then you get a couple of newcomers like Atom Smasher and Cyclone, who I liked what they were doing with them, but they don't get enough time and investment for me to really feel like they got complete stories. So, and then there's a few other side characters that we interact with that were kind of, I won't say unnecessary, but they definitely could have been reworked, because those are some of the weaknesses of the movie, which we'll get to the weaknesses in a second. But the strengths are obviously, I think, The Rock is Black Adam is a strength. I think the JSA and the connections to Shazam are really strong. And I actually think that the score itself, not like music, the songs that were kind of picked for this, but the actual score, the symphony stuff worked for this film quite a bit. And the story a little bit, is you kind of might have gotten from some of the trailers, but essentially The Rock as Black Adam gets brought back to modern day after he was like a slave back in 2,000, 5,000 years ago. He got these powers to help protect his nation, and then he got put away, and he has to come back, or he gets brought back into this world where he's got some villains to fight. But at the same time, the JSA is getting sent in to take care of Black Adam, because they see him as a threat because of the way he's actually taking care of the bad guys is not the way heroes would typically take care of bad guys. So there's your conflict right there. And I think interesting enough premise to at least get you a decent skeleton of a movie plot. Where the problems end up for me is it is a bit messy. It is all over the place. There are so many things it's like they wanted to do, and they just should have narrowed it down. So they had like 5 or 6 things they really wanted to focus on, and instead, they were like, well, we could have pared it down to a couple of really strong plot points that we could have focused on and made the narrative stronger, but instead it was, well, let's just throw all 5 things in here and we'll see if we get it to work. Because there's a lot of stuff about like a people rising up against oppressors, which is actually a really cool message, and they don't stick with that well enough, and when they do stick with it, it's not super strong. There's a couple of characters in this movie that I didn't expect to have in this movie, and they kind of really pulled down what could have been a great story. I just don't think it was executed very well. They could have worked, but it was just poor writing, and I think some really weird decisions with a couple of these characters. They decided like, well, we need this character to get from point A to point B and get some of the story rolling, which is fine, but then they stick with it, and it's just, it gets old, it gets annoying and frustrating at points. And when you see the movie, you might understand where that frustration comes from, because it was like, why are these characters even here? Like, there's this other more interesting conflict with the JSA and Black Adam that we could be focusing on, but now we have to throw this monkey wrench into the situation, and I just don't think that worked. The actual villain that you get in the third act of the movie isn't very strong, and a lot of those scenes, I mean, yeah, very CGI heavy and just not the greatest. I mean, it's pretty much typical superhero third act stuff, which kind of bummed me out, but it wasn't the biggest negative in the world. And yeah, I think some of the actual music choices were really odd. Like a really great scene of Black Adam just taking on this whole army, and they inserted some song, and it was just like, why is this here? This is very distracting. He is thrashing and shredding dudes, and we have this weird song choice over it. Why? Like, you have this great score that I've been hearing, and you use a song. I feel like the score would have made that moment or that whole scene, a little better. So yeah, bit of a mess. I mean, this film's all over the place, but there are some bright spots in there, especially if you're a DC fan. There's a lot of great stuff in here for you. If you're not a DC fan, I think you won't like this at all. I really do think that average comic book fan, movie fans, or just average movie fans in general will go to this and be like, wow, that was not great. And I wouldn't blame you. I could totally see that. The other thing is, this film does have way much more slow-mo than a Zack Snyder film. And if you've ever seen a Zack Snyder film, you know he loves using his slow-mo. But here, man, they use so much slow-mo. Almost to the point where I was like, really? Like, do we have to keep using slow-mo? Like, I get that you're doing it for certain characters, which makes sense, but it just felt like they use it for so much stuff that you didn't need to do it. And it was really distracting. It took me out of the movie quite a bit. And of course, before I give my grade, I do want to say, everybody, stick around for the mid-credit scene. It is just a mid-credit scene. There is no post-credit scene. So once you get to the one scene, you're done. And when you see it, I mean, you've probably already heard it. It's been all over the internet. But if and when you see it, it's the last 20 seconds of that clip it gets me so excited for what the future of DC could be. And we'll see what happens. There's a lot of cool stuff that could come out of this movie, even though I think this movie is pretty mediocre. There's so much that could come out of this that I'm very hyped about. So in the end here, guys, I'm going to give this just a solid C. Again, didn't love it, didn't hate it. There was so much good stuff in here that I think they could build on down the road. And definitely some stuff that they could just, let's push a couple of these characters to the back and we never have to see these guys again. But I think some people might get some enjoyment out of it. It is a very action-heavy film. Some of the action works. Some of it's a little too CG for me at times. But hey, let me know what you guys think when you go see it. So, of course, leave your comments down below. Is Black Adam something you're curious about seeing, or have you seen or going to see? Make sure you also hit that like button, guys. Then if you could please also hit the subscribe button. Then hit that the bell notification thing as well to be notified whenever I drop new videos. Yes, those are all the things I need to say at the end of videos. But yeah, so that's it. Black Adam. Not going to make the top of a DC list, but might find it on the bottom of a DC list. Who knows? It depends on your taste. But anyway, enough of me rambling, guys. I will see you next time with another review, I guess. See you.